Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Timothy Lee, and I'm a mining analyst here at Red Cloud Securities. Our next presentation will be from Purepoint Uranium Group. Our speaker is Chris Frostad, President and CEO. Purepoint has numerous uranium projects across the Athabasca Basin, and it is taking advantage of the current market to dust off several of its 100% owned projects. Chris, you have 15 minutes, and then we will have a 5-minute Q&A at the end of the session. Attendees, please feel free to ask questions using the Q&A link below. Take it away, Chris.
That's great. Thanks a lot, Tim. Thank you, Red Cloud, for having us today. This has been a good day so far. It's been interesting to watch what's been going on. And certainly it was interesting to watch Dave and Grant discussions there. As you mentioned, we're kind of reacting to the market's excitement, I guess, these days around uraniums. And it's nice to hear that the nuclear side is kind of pulling the boat in that direction as well as we move along. I want to start here in terms of what we've been up to. Purepoint's been around for a while, actually. We've been operating in the basin for quite some time, over the last decade or so. And over the last 8 years, 10 years, we've really been primarily focused on our Hook Lake project, which is a joint venture with Cameco and Orano. And the reason being is that once we saw the markets start to languish post 2007, post 2008, and then when Fukushima hit in 2011, we looked for a method in which we could maintain the value of our assets, because by that time we had amassed quite a strong portfolio of projects that we wanted to keep working, but the markets weren't really cooperating in that regard. So we've been fortunate that we've been able to focus on Hook Lake. We've been neighboring to a number of very strong projects in that area with Fission and NextGen. A lot of our efforts have been supported and financed by our partners, Cameco and Orano. So it's been a very appropriate way for us to keep ourselves busy and relevant and working hard out there in the basin. What we're reacting to now certainly is the movement in the markets. We've seen a few of these in the past over the last 10 years, but this one seems to be very, very different. It's certainly lasting longer than we've seen in the past. We've seen a few blips, but this time around, it's been 5, 6, 7 months that we've seen steady growth and interest in the markets. What we think they're preparing for movement in the uranium prices, which we haven't quite seen yet, but we feel are coming. And in that regard, we've now kind of taken a shift in how we're operating and how we're running. We've reloaded up the bank, if you will, and pulled the sheet off of a lot of very, very large and fabulous projects as far as we're concerned. So that's really our focus. We've now been able to announce a lot of the work that we're going to be doing over the next year, which is significantly more than we've been doing over the last few years. And that's really what we'll kind of talk about today. As you can see, our stock price has been flowing up, not unlike a lot of the folks that are talking here today. It's a pretty common story. We all see the market sort of positioning itself for this revival in uranium prices as we move along, and we've been fortunate enough to take advantage of that. Talking about our projects, again, we are, as we mentioned, we're located in northern Saskatchewan in the Athabasca Basin. We have a dozen projects there. We've been focused primarily on the west, which is our Hook Lake project. You see there on the left, our partnership with Cameco and Orano. We own 21% of that project, and we've been operating it for some time now. But in addition to that, we have a host of other great projects. The 3 that we've already done first pass drilling on are Smart Lake, which is another joint venture we have with Cameco. It neighbors the Hook Lake project, and Red Willow and Turner, which are on the eastern side of the basin, right in that mine trend that occurs on the east. We also have a couple of projects that are ready to start drilling. We've done all of the preliminary geophysical work necessary to define targets. That's at Umfreville and Henday. And then we have a handful of earlier stage projects where we now have geophysics planned moving forward. So where typically we've been focused on doing a winter program at Hook Lake, we've been fortunate enough to be able to now plan out a lot more work in the coming year, and we're really revving up the engines as we move into 2021. As far as Hook Lake and Smart Lake go, we work in tandem with our partners, and their budgets are set for this year. We're talking to them now with regards to what our next programs will look like in 2021. And most of those decisions won't be made till the fall. We are fortunate in that we have permits, drill permits already in place on 3 of our projects. That's Red Willow, Umferville, and Henday, which allows us really to get up and moving there very quickly. So we now are putting together drill plans and drill programs to drill at Red Willow, at Umferville, at Henday, probably about 2,000 meters each. We'll be coming up with more details on those programs shortly, but we really are moving along to try and get those things going as quickly as possible. Our earlier stage projects, Carson and Russell, we're now talking with service providers to get our ground geophysics done out there later in the year, getting our applications for permits done now. Turner Lake, which we'll talk about briefly again or quickly later in the program. We're ready to start drilling out there. We don't have a permit yet, so we're working on that application. And again, that work is best done in the winter. So we'll be planning on drilling that at the end of the year. And then we have a newer area we'll talk about a little bit called the Tabernor Block, and that's 4 other projects we have that we'll be doing airborne on this summer. So I'll start with our Hook Lake project, which is the one we have been focusing on for some time now. It's where a lot of the work we've been doing has been done of late. We just completed a drill program early this year, and released the results of that last week, or earlier this week, I should say. This is Hook Lake here. What you see in the orange outline, that is our claim lines, and our partners Cameco and Orano. And we sit adjacent to and just north of NextGen and their Arrow deposit, and further south Fission and their Triple R deposit. All of these deposits, and you see some of the red dots there up to the north, all of this mineralization lies along what we know as the Patterson corridor, which is a stretch of graphitic conductors that run up, and a structure that runs up through the center of the project. And that's where we've been looking at, or our programs really have been focused on following that up, on understanding the setting there, and understanding how the mineralization is occurring, where it's occurring. It's about 8 kilometers in our claim block there, from the south there where you see the Spitfire deposit right up to the northern end. So it's a lot of project, a lot of property that we've had to take a good hard long look at. One of the other images I'll show you here is a gravity survey that the government of Saskatchewan, or that the Federal Geological Survey put out recently. And what I'll point out here is that all the mineralization that we see up along that trend happens at these transitions. You see it happening in kind of the yellow, where the high gravity, the pink, kind of transitions into the low yellow. And that's something we've noticed more and more as we've been drilling. I mean, haven't just drilled in these spots, but as we drill in between, we really start to understand what these rock types are. And we see that these transitions are very important to where mineralization is occurring along Patterson. Up to the north there, you see a larger circle. That's an area that we call the Saber Zone, and that's where we recently that was where we were drilling this past winter. This is that area there. The red lines you see there are graphitic conductors, which are really our starting target points. The conductors we see there were the result of a geophysical survey we did early last year. And our interest in the area was really driven by 2 holes. Now, these are about 4 kilometers apart, so this is a fairly large area. And both 105 and 115 came up with significantly strong silicification and alteration, which is an indication that there's been a real highly heated mobilization event occur in the area. You get it's altered that rock to a different state, and that's something we're always looking for. And of course, in both of those holes, we saw low levels of uranium. So this year we wanted to start to move away from those holes and start to understand how the geology, how the mineralization was changing or moving as we move along. We drilled 3 holes out there. The first one was 116, which is about 400 meters north of 105. And the results of that actually were that we didn't see that alteration continuing to the north, or certainly in that hole or on that conductor, and nor did we see the radioactivity continuing. So we would have to go in a different direction if we were to follow 105 from that one. But further to the north, when we look at 117, which was about 800 meters south of 115, and then 118, which backed up from 118 or 115. There we continued to see the high levels of solidification and alteration. So there has been a major event in this area. We continue to see low levels of radioactivity, but it's given us something now to follow up on. And in this situation, we would either start looking south of 117 or north of 115 if we were to follow this up. I think the most important takeaway here, though, is that we now understand this area a little better. And as with every program we do, we then have to go back and reprioritize it with our other targets. And Hook Lake is certainly far bigger than one or two drill targets, that's for sure. So you see the Sabre Zone up there to the north. The other areas that our partners and I and ourselves have identified as priority targets are further to the north. W, south, you see the southeast conductor, the U conductor. And the one that is really of interest to us right now is what we call the Carter Corridor to the left. The blue you see there is the Clearwater domain, and it's now understood that it may well have been the heat source for this entire area that allowed for the deposition to occur. So as you look at Triple R and Arrow along the south here, along this corridor, in fact, we have another transition zone over here. It's up against this heat source. And this entire conductor has yet to be tested. And it has yet to be tested by us, and it has yet to be tested by anybody else because the entire conductor resides within our claim block. So that's an important priority. So we'll be working with Cameco and Orano over the year to determine what our next steps will be and how we prioritize our drilling there going forward. Where there's going to be a lot more work going on this year, though, and I'll talk about this briefly because there's a lot of stuff going on, is the rest of our portfolio and our 100% owned projects across on the other side of the basin. Of course, what you see is Smart Lake and Hook Lake on the left, on the west. Those are our joint ventures with Cameco and Orano. Smart Lake, we'll talk about in a second. On the other side of the province and along the mine trend, we see Umferville, Turner Lake, Carson, Red Willow, Henday, and Russell. And those are all projects that we now have got in our pipeline to get work done this year on everything to the extent that we can. The last area, which is more of an earlier stage projects, we have 4 projects which we refer to as the Tabernor Block, and the reason that we've identified these claims as important right now is that they're associated with a shear structure known as the Tabernor Shear System, which runs 100 or 1,500 kilometers north-south in the province. And along it, there is upwards of 80 historic mines and gold showings, primarily gold, that run along that shear system, one of which is the Homestake mine, where they mined about over 40 million ounces of gold. So it's a very important structural system. And as we look at it, we've now understand that a lot of the uranium projects to the north lie along that system. So that's why these were staked the way they were, and we'll be starting with some airborne work over them in the near future. The project, we actually had a press release out this morning. We've got a lot more information out for people to take a look at, is Red Willow. That is where our first drill program will be taking place this year shortly, once we get things sorted out up there. It's our largest project. It sits nearby the Jeb mine and the Eagle Point mine, and there's been uranium showings all around the area. So it lies right at the edge of the basin, and within that project, we have I got to count them now. We've got eight distinct zones that will be that we've identified for drilling around the area. We will be starting with the Osprey zone, which is where we've done a lot of work previously, and we're now following that up, and probably down to the Geneva. But all of these zones will be doing considerable work on prioritizing and getting out there this year. And again, there's a lot of information on this on our website, and there's actually a video out this morning that'll walk you through these zones. The other area that we're keen on right now is our Turner Lake project. It sits, and I don't know if you can see this, but there's a kind of a pinwheel shaped granitic dome right in the center of it that all of these conductors wrap around. And most importantly is along the western side is this little rock corridor. And along that corridor, we've got around those alligators showing at 3.8% uranium in the south, up to the Larock at 33.9 over 5.5 meters. ISO Energy has their hurricane zone as we move up further, 39.9% over 8.5 meters. And then it cuts across the top of our property. There's also a lot of uranium showings all in that area. So this is an important project for us. We would probably start at the north, where you see that Sarin conductor, or we refer to it as the Sarin conductor. And one of the reasons we really like it up there is back in '85, there was a seismic line done across that where we've found or identified a thrust fault, and that conductor hits it right at the thrust fault, which is similar to a lot of settings we've seen at Key Lake and MacArthur, et cetera. So that's the trend that we're following. That would be the next place we would be drilling there. I'm just going to hit a few others really quick here. This is our Hook Lake project with Cameco. We've only had one drill program there. We hit uranium in our first drill hole. After that program, a lot of the light moved us over to Patterson, and we haven't been back yet, but we have been back with the Cameco folks over the last year or so, relooking at that core and planning our next programs at that project. It actually has an interesting tie-in to the Shea Creek deposits to the north and Clough Lake, which is why Cameco staked it to begin with. You can kind of see those fingers of granite coming down and then being shifted over by the Beatty River Fault and then coming down through Smart Lake. So the thinking is that Saskatoon Lake conductor that hosts all those deposits is actually the same conductor that comes down into our project. So that's all I'll show you today, but we do have a lot of information, a lot of work we've got underway this year. We've got probably the best pipeline of projects going in the basin right now. So there's going to be a lot of activity, and we'll hope you keep your eyes on us. Tim?
Great. Thank you very much, Chris. And we will now begin the Q&A portion of the presentation here. We do have a couple of questions submitted already. One, what are some difficulties you are finding with ramping up so many exploration programs this year?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a scramble. It is interesting. The first thing that a lot of ourselves and our peers are running into is the permitting issues. Permitting's gotten more sophisticated over the last while, primarily on the consultation side. There's a lot of communities to the north. It's added time. So it's not that it's difficult, it just adds time to it. We were fortunate that we've been trying to keep ahead of that in anticipation of a year like this. So last year we actually obtained our permits for Red Willow, for Henday, for Umferville, which is what's allowing us to get out there right away and drill. The other thing is right now everybody's busy. I mean, there's a lot of money, not just coming into uranium, but everywhere. So try and find a drill, try and find a crew, try and find a helicopter, a cook. It's been a scramble, and we're fortunate because we've been working all along up there in the basin. We have a lot of very deep relationships, and so we've been able to work with our drill company to find windows of when we're going to be able to drill and get a crew in there. We've located helicopter companies, so we have a lot of these relationships in place that have allowed us to do that. And because we're really, it's like a time capsule for us, because we were moving along at this pace 8 years ago, 10 years ago, when the market decided to come to a screeching halt. And, we have got so much information, data that we've had time to mull over, look at. We've really been able to cull this down to, the most prospective stuff we've got. And so it's allowed us to kind of get up and go pretty quick.
Great. And we have one question that's specific to the Hook Lake exploration results that were just announced the other day.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on them? And actually they asked if that's weighed a bit on the share price in the last few days.
Probably. And it depends on what you're looking at. So if to the extent that the market is is betting purely on a Hook Lake, then yeah, I think what we've seen over the last year or so is the budget for exploration at Hook Lake has come down. Not necessarily because of a lack of interest, but we follow Cameco and Orano's budgets. And I think as Grant was mentioning, they've really been slowing up on that side of it. We're one of the few exploration projects that they do fund on an annual basis. But as those amounts come down, we have to be very selective about what we do. And our partners are very, very cautious. And as I've said many times, they pace us in terms of we can't go out and spend more money until we've completely digested what we spent last year and understand what we're looking at. So we weren't disappointed with it. I mean, it was a small program. I think we were pretty open about the fact that these are big step outs. We're moving up 400, 800 meters. You can fit 4 or 5 deposits in the middle of that. But it was really a first pass on this area to really understand the setting and to really start to look for those things that we can follow up on. That was really the intention. So we learned what we hoped, what we sought to learn. We didn't poke a hole through the third largest deposit on that side of the basin, but our partners and ourselves we got what we were looking for at this point in time.
Great. Thank you very much, Chris. And thank you folks out there for listening, for your questions.